hectares. And between 6th and 13th of February 2018, there were 14,224 active fires detected. Taraba has the largest tree cover at 1.33 milli-hectares compared to an average of 239 kilo-hectares. Cross River has 1.06 milli-hectares, then Ondo State 825 kilo-hectares. Edo is fourth with 790 kilo-hectares, and it is followed by Delta State with 739 kilo-hectares. From 2001 to 2012, Nigeria gained 16.3 kilo-hectares of tree cover region-wide, equivalent to 0.7% increase relative to 2010 tree cover extent.
Most of the data we refer to are either FAO or UN data, which, in fairness to them, you'll see below the data estimated. But I want to tell you, I don't think it's as bad as being portrayed. I still can tell you that Nigeria is still very rich in some vegetation cover, not as thick as ought to be or used to be. I know recently we did some satellite image interpretation for about 4 states. That's Ogun, Osun, Ondo, and Taraba State. And it wasn't as bad as estimated, though some level of deforestation is going on within there. But they are manageable, and if stopped now, regeneration would not take too much time. So the vegetation cover of the country is not as bad as being portrayed. We couldn't have lost about 95%, and we're still here. It will be very, very difficult for us to be still here, and Lagos is still floating on water. Then that would have been very, yeah, I know that there's some serious distortion in what ought to be, particularly a mangrove. When we talk about mangrove, we talk about the data part of this country, owing to the oil exploration activities and co. But I know there's also meeting going on that to see whether they can allow it follow so that we can work on the regeneration of such mangrove. So it's not as bad as that.
Nigeria, home to Africa's largest human and its largest economy, has also retained vibrant wilderness. The country's forests and savanna parks and wetlands rank among the continent's most important. The top man at the Forestry Research Institute in Nigeria says Nigeria's biodiversity is very rich.
I think in Africa, probably the only country that wants to compete with us in terms of our biodiversity will probably be Congo, DRC. Jokes apart, Nigeria is very rich. In one of my lab here, in the herbarium here, we have over 125,000 species of various plant species in Nigeria biodiversity, which is the largest herbarium in West Africa and probably competing in Africa. 125,000 different plant species is not a joke. And if you go to the insect collection in the same department, I think they have close to 80,000. So the question is, how many of these species are still in existence? How many are extinct? To our own capability, those that we can save, we have saved in what we call arboretum for plants. We bring them back, maybe on 1 acre land, just leave some species of those plants there, at least for future reference, for those who want to have an idea of how this plant looks like. And to do a photo herbarium of all these plants also, because you cannot tell of anything that can happen. So we're doing a volumetric documentation of all these various species and with details of what they are, the family they belong, and what were their use or uses for, so that at least that can further research in future.
But he warned that there is a need to be worried about human activities in relation to the forest.
We should be more than worried because I tell you, this is a part of what gives some of us nightmare. When you have an idea of the volume or the ratio of how much water occupies on earth and land, and you have an idea of what tsunami is like. If you have ever seen the video footage of the one that happens in Japan, you will know that we shouldn't joke with this. Because the only thing, like I told you, that slows down the movement of water is vegetation. And if you find out how much do they even buy this log, that will anger you the more. Bringing down a tree may not even cost 5,000 naira. The total cost of buying or selling that tree. So when you look at it vis-a-vis the consequences, bringing that one tree is costing the country, then you know something is wrong somewhere. And where there are equipment that can relocate that particular tree, even if it's on the wrong place, you can relocate without even cutting. I can move a whole tree as big as this room from one spot to another spot without affecting anything. But in terms of its consequences, it's unquantifiable. But then we still have to look at who has the power. Does the federal has the power? To some extent, to where it has control. And that's probably the land acquired by federal before the Land Use Act. But the Land Use Act empowered the state. So the state has limited power on what it does with this land. Even as a forester, if I decide to go and plant up a field I thought is empty today, and the governor comes tomorrow and said, no, I need that field for something else, and bring down all the trees, what power do I have? The power over land is given to the state.
Nigeria's rural populations depend on agriculture for their livelihoods, eking out a living on typically small farms, many of which are expanding into previously remote forested areas. This pronounced expansion in Nigeria is causing habitat fragmentation and inevitable human-wildlife conflicts. Nigeria's biologically diverse landscape encompasses lowlands and mountain forests, mangroves, swamps, and mountain grasslands. Yet, the proliferation of subsistence farms and large-scale timber harvesting forecasts bad news for native wildlife, particularly the African elephant and the extremely rare cross-river gorilla. Gorillas and elephants need large, continuous ranges to survive.